We're day 474 into what Vladimir Putin had planned as a 10-day special military operation. And we're probably about two and a half weeks into the counteroffensive. And everyone has been focusing on this Ukrainian counteroffensive and what it means, when it's going to start and how it's going. Well, it's actually really quite complex. And it started a while ago as part of the preparation phase. We saw drones over Moscow. We saw Russians who are affiliated to the Ukrainian military attacking into mainland Russia, into the Belgorod region. We've seen reports of trains being derailed. We've seen reports of oil refineries mysteriously catching fire. The Ukrainians have been attacking Russian command and control posts with their new Storm Shadow missiles, Russian logistic hubs with their Storm Shadow missiles, and we've had reports of attacks against Russian shipping in the Black Sea. All of this is part of the preparation phase that you have in trying to keep your enemy guessing as to what you're going to do, and you're softening up their ability to respond to any actions that you take. Then, only a few days ago, we started to see activity on the ground. It's probably been going for about a week now maximum, but this got into the probing phase. We saw relatively lightly armored Ukrainian forces pushing into the Russian defensive positions, looking for where the minefields were, gathering information and intelligence about where the Russian troops were deployed, looking at potential gaps that there were through that and trying to exploit into those to get further information and see where the Russian strengths were, where their weaknesses were, and then the best places for the Ukrainians to start to push through. And in the last 2 or 3 days, we've seen the Ukrainians begin to push through with heavier armor. They've been using armored vehicles designed to breach minefields. They've been sending Western main battle tanks. We've seen the first use of the German Leopard tanks. We've seen the first use of the American infantry Bradley fighting vehicles. And both of them, whilst damaged in small numbers, have saved large numbers of their crews. So they have been successful in these operations. And we're seeing the Ukrainians attacking in 3 real areas. The first one is one we've been talking about for over a year, and that's Bakhmut. And they've been attacking to the north of Bakhmut, and there are some unconfirmed reports that they've advanced over 1 kilometer in territory. We have to remember that Bakhmut, whilst Russia was attacking into it, they were only been able to achieve 50 to 100 meters a day if they were lucky, and sometimes only 100 meters in a week, a huge loss of troops. There have been no reported numbers of casualties on the Ukrainian side, but for an attacking force, casualties are usually very high. The next area that the Ukrainians are attacking in is to the south of Donetsk, and they're pushing in through some of the villages that are there. And again, there are reports of the forces having success in that area. The third area that the Ukrainians are attacking into is a line effectively from Zaporizhia down through the occupied village of Tomak, potentially towards Melitopol, down on the coast. Now, Tomak is interesting because you've got rail and road lines of communication that go through there, and it's part of the key land bridge between Crimea, the Donbass, and Russia. The whole rationale behind why Vladimir Putin wanted to capture the area. So that is a significant area if the Ukrainians can capture it, can attack into it and capture it. The Russians are concerned. You know, their deliberate breach of the dam on the Dnipro, flooding the area, has given a very hard shoulder on the, down that river, freeing up about 200 kilometers of territory where it's virtually impossible for the Ukrainians to attack across. And therefore that means that the Russians can pick up the forces that they had in that area of the Kherson Oblast, right up to the north of Crimea, and bring them together as part of a reserve force to counter any Ukrainian attacks through. We haven't seen the Ukrainian main effort attack yet. If that comes in, it'll come in at least at brigade size, if not more. And that will follow through the probing attacks that are going on at the moment and any opportunities that they see that they can exploit. Where that's going to happen, when that's going to happen, only the Ukrainians know. They've got the momentum at the moment, and they can choose the time and the place. In the meantime, the political heat is continuing, and we're seeing continued tensions between Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner private military company, and the Russian Minister of Defense, headed by the Defense Minister Shoigu. Shoigu, only a couple of days ago, turned around and said that he wanted all troops, no matter where they were from, to make sure that they had signed up contracts to the Russian military by the 1st of July. Prigozhin saw that as an attack on his private military company, of which private military companies are actually illegal under the Russian constitution, but he's refused to allow his troops to sign up to that. Prigozhin has been very vocal in his criticism of Shoigu, the defense minister, and of General Gerasimov, who's got the overall command of Russian operations inside Ukraine. But interestingly, clearly Prigozhin has got a fair degree of power, or is still potentially in Vladimir Putin's pocket, because he hasn't taken up window cleaning or had some other form of accident, even though his criticism is very vocal. So where are we at the moment? We're at the early stages of the counteroffensive. The Ukrainians have got the initiative. They are exploiting some of the areas that they're managing to achieve some successes in. The Russians are holding them back in some of the other areas. Casualties, I suspect, on the ground will be high. But when we look at the morale of the Ukrainian troops, they seem to be buoyed up by the successes that they're having. And their morale has been high through all of this, because they're protecting their homeland, they're protecting their families, they're fighting for their very existence. We've got unconfirmed reports of the Russians sending squads out to shoot their troops who are abandoning their defensive positions. This is something the Russians did during the Second World War. That shows that morale on the Russian side will not be good. They don't know why they're there. They're not defending their homelands. So the initiative, both from a moral perspective and a wider military perspective, remains with Ukraine at the moment. However, the coming days will tell an awful lot more, and it's a very early stage of this counteroffensive.